my 9/11 experience pretty much, my day actually pretty much started just as all of my days began. I worked on the 80th floor of the South Tower. I worked for a company, Fuji Bank Unlimited was the name of the company. We had 4 floors in that tower. Those 4 floors that we paid rent on were 78, 79, 80, and 81. We had some space on 82, but not the whole floor. So I left my house here in Brooklyn pretty much around the same time as I usually do. Um, my commute was roughly about 45 minutes via train. It was really direct, went right into the bottom of the trade center. Um, that day, I guess I pretty much remember getting to work around 7 o'clock. We were very busy that time of year. I worked in a general accounting and expense area, and we had a number of um, processes where we worked with internal auditors, outside auditors. My main job was to help supervise a small group of people on an accounting system in the general affairs department. And I worked for an American vice president as well as a senior vice president who happened to be Japanese. So I got to work around 7 o'clock. Went to my desk, got my coffee, had gotten my coffee downstairs, my newspaper, went to my desk, met with my best friend at the time, who also worked for the bank. He was in purchasing area, and he also did some security stuff, and we had been friends for a while. So I was getting set up. He was running around as typical. I remember him coming by for a minute, and he said to me, lunch, kind of like question mark. And I said, sure. I said, 12:30 sounds good. Yep, 12:30 is good. And he went back to his office. I went to my desk. I started to do some work. Then I would say that when the North Tower was attacked, we had clearly heard the explosion. And from where we were facing, we were able to, our view, which was behind me, we were able to see the Statue of Liberty. So getting up from my desk after hearing what I thought to be an explosion and seeing black smoke, I couldn't see everything, but I knew something had happened at the North Tower. And there was rumors flying all around. We had a trading floor that was constantly running. So a bunch of traders had come in to my area on the 80th floor, and they were trying to see, because they had said that they had heard also, and there was some early news reports that some people were talking about a light aircraft that had crashed into the North Tower. So I guess it was within 15 or 20 minutes from there that a number of other people had come into my floor, into the work area. A couple of people had to be to work before 9 o'clock. And some of them were on their phones, and some of them were getting reports from the Port Authority about a situation. I think that's how it was phrased, a situation going on in the North Tower. And there were PA announcements coming directly from the Port Authority office over the intercom. I'm assuming it was all the floors, but I know I could certainly hear it on our floor, about a controlled situation in the North Tower. There was no reason to evacuate at this point. There was no reason to leave your work area. In essence, the situation was under control. So, I didn't have a cell phone. I was still pretty early in the morning. My wife was getting, I knew by this time my wife was getting my daughter ready for her first day of kindergarten. strangely enough. And I certainly didn't want to alarm her or call her. And I knew at some point in time, my wife also was on her commute to work, and she had worked Midtown. So she may not have been aware of anything anyway. Um, Long story short, with that, what happened was, as the smoke from the North Tower continued to get a bit stronger, it started to come into. There had been a smell that had started to come into the South Tower pretty high up. Our hallways had kind of like a hazy smoke to it. Um, my best friend, who had a walkie-talkie because of his responsibilities, had come back from his office, which was down the stairs, and he was on the radio with the Port Authority. So a couple of minutes had gone by, and he said to me, maybe what we better do is go up to a couple of the higher floors that Fuji had, and just evacuate people from there who we felt maybe should consider coming down, or get those people to come down a couple of floors in case we decided to evacuate our floors and go down lower or leave the building completely. Throughout this time, there were numerous announcements from the Port Authority about please remain on your floor, remain at your desk. This was all a controlled situation in North Tower, although they were not specifically stating, obviously, I guess, what had happened. So at that point, my friend and I apologize. One of the things I left out here was that we had been asked to be volunteer fire wardens for the 80th floor. And we had drills periodically. There were mandatory drills, and we were responsible for getting people on the 80th floor to an exit should there have been a fire, or should there have been a situation where we could have had to leave. So when he came back, his suggestion to me was that we go up to potentially the 82nd floor and just be sure that those floors were still pretty empty. They were much higher than us. We weren't completely sure what was going on, certainly in the North Tower, but there was smoke, and there were some situations that were starting to get a little more serious in the South Tower. We went up to the 82nd floor. We used the A stairwell, which was right near us. Came across a couple of people, told them that they had, there had been a situation in North Tower, and maybe they had wanted to start coming down. We encountered, I would say, about 4 or 5 senior vice president Japanese members of the company, who basically told us no, that they were going to stay. And we didn't, we certainly, there wasn't much we could do. They were kind of just giving us their view of, we're fine. And we left, went back into the A stairwell, came back to the 80th floor, tried to get some more information from the Port Authority. And then we both pretty much now, knowing that there was a little bit more of a haze in the hallways, and it was getting we felt a little more serious. We were going to start down just to get to a couple of lower floors. So we started from the 80th floor in the A stairwell. I said to my friend Jack, listen, I made a joke. I said, listen, I said, you're a little older than I am. I said, you're a smoker. I was like, why don't you, being that we're going to do this walk down, why don't you go in front of me and I'll be behind you, and we'll kind of keep an eye on each other. So that's what we did. And as we entered the A stairwell, we encountered people from other companies from much higher up, starting to come down. As a matter of fact, the stairwell got kind of crowded to where there was a backup of a line of people. So eventually I lost track of Jack. I didn't know how far ahead he was. I knew he was ahead of me. And what happened was, around the 60th floor, I don't remember the exact floor number, but because of the running around, and you had to go 2 stairwells to get to 1 floor at that time, I'd started to get a little fatigued from running around, a little out of breath. So I had said that I was going to stop. I was going to stop and take a break. There was a number of people coming down, and I was just going to start to pull on some doors to see if they were open, and they were company doors, other companies, um, to see if we could get those doors open, and I could just sit for a minute. I went and I don't remember the name of the company. Like I said, I believe it was around 60, 62 maybe. So I had stopped and I pulled open a door. And as I entered um, the room, as I described it, had popped. And what I mean by that was there was a clear mini explosion in the room. The tiles from the ceiling had started to come down. In essence, the room had collapsed. And at that moment, I was knocked to the floor. At that moment, I knew something serious now was going on in the South Tower. I was kind of knocked a little silly, being on the floor. The room did fill up with smoke, but it was mostly a dust from the collapsing ceiling tiles. And I had, again, been knocked to the floor. I could feel the room had rocked a little bit. And once I got myself together, I decided that I wasn't going to stand back up. I was going to try to turn around and crawl back to where I thought I had come from. I knew I wasn't cut. My ears were ringing a bit, and I had quite a bit of dust and stuff in my eyes and my face. Before I climbed, had crawled back out of there, I looked over, and in the corner of that room, on pure coincidence, I had seen my friend Jack. So it became apparent to me that without knowing, he had also gone into that same room. And I could see him as I started to crawl from a different spot. I could see him also making his way back to the same entrance door, back to the A stairwell. So I got myself back to the stairwell. The air there was much cleaner. It was actually refreshing. And I had sat down on the stairs in the A stairwell. And at this point, there really wasn't that many more people coming down. It had gotten a bit quieter. There was, maybe there was a couple of people I could hear, a couple of stairwells ahead of me, but I really don't recall seeing a lot of people behind me. Once I got myself situated, there was a young girl, very heavy set young girl, who had been coming down, and she was having what I thought to be a severe anxiety attack, as well as what it turned out to be was an asthmatic attack. She was a heavy set young girl, and as it turned out, she was from Morgan Stanley. She was there on a conference, and she had stopped outside the door that I was coming back to. So once I got myself together, I said to her, "Listen," I said, we'll walk down together. It'll be okay." So we kind of started to reassure each other. And within, I would say, 5 or 6 minutes, we had, gotten ourselves together, and we started to walk back down. And for the most part, again, we didn't have anybody passing us really. I could hear as we got closer to the bottom, and we didn't stop again after that situation. I could hear people ahead of us as we got to the bottom, and thankfully we got to the bottom. We got to the lobby, and we were directed out towards. It was a Fulton Street exit of the building. I don't know what the cross street there was, if it was Liberty. But anyway, we'd come out onto the patio of the two towers, and as soon as we got out, I had said to her that I couldn't see. It was very bright that day, and I was having trouble opening up my eyes. And what she did was she kind of then guided me over to a medics area where they were triaging people. And I heard her explain to the gentleman that, we've been involved in what now was the attack on the second tower. Uh, and I had stuff in my eyes and I couldn't open my eyes. So she basically got someone to start to rinse out my eyes. Now, as we were walking away from the building, the building now was behind us, and we were at the corner of where the Millennium Hotel is. And it was right there. I think that Fulton Street runs from that point up the block. As I sat down and he started to rinse my eyes, he had been looking over my shoulder, and I heard and Tiffany, who was the girl I came down with, heard the building start to collapse. South Tower was obviously the second building hit, but it was the first to collapse. And I didn't know what the noise was because I was still a little bit out of it from what had happened upstairs. And the medic rinsed my eyes real quick, and he looked at me and he said to me, "You need to get up and run." And I could not fathom what he was in essence talking about, but now I could start to hear people outside panic and stampede, really, for lack of a better word. There were people that were running mostly to my left. And as it turned out, it happened to be up Fulton Street. And it got very, very noisy. And I saw him basically, he quit triaging me and he took off. So I got up from where I was sitting and I went left, which put me on Fulton Street. And immediately, within a couple of seconds, I was caught in the dust cloud from the initial collapse of the tower. So it got pitch black. It got midnight black. I had no idea really where I was running. And as a matter of fact, as I started up what turned out to be Fulton Street, I had yelled out, "Where are we running to?" And what happened was that apparently a lot of the firemen from the firehouse there, engine 10, ladder 10, right there, when they had gotten caught in that, they used, and I guess it was a tactic that they used their hands because they stayed close to the other buildings that were not affected initially. And they were able to find doorway gaps. They were able to find, as it turned out, they found a stairwell to protect themselves to get off the street. So as I yelled, "Where are we running to?" All of a sudden there was an arm that kind of stuck out from a stairwell, and this person said, "Right here," and he pulled me off of Fulton Street. And as he pulled me, I could clearly hear him kind of backwards fall. And I was again trying to get my bearings as to where I was and who had just yanked me off the street. I knew there were things that were hitting the street around me. I was pretty clear what had happened at this point, that the South Tower was beginning to collapse, and I could hear things hitting the street. So at that point, this person who had pulled me, I knew he had fallen. I had been able to see that he had fallen backwards down a flight of stairs. And he pulled me hard enough that as I had started to correct myself, because he pulled me that I was kind of off my feet, I was in the same stairway, which turned out to be the parking lot of the Millennium Hotel. I went to correct myself and I started to fall. And as I started to fall down those same stairs, I could hear my left ankle and my left foot snap. So I didn't have any way of getting any shifting weight back to get my feet underneath me. So I fell and I went down about 10 or 11 stairs, I guess, maybe 12. And I landed on this particular individual who turned out to be a fireman. And I said to him, okay, I was awake. I wasn't knocked unconscious. I said, but I can't get up. I said, I know I heard something snap in my foot and my ankle. I actually thought it was more my leg. But he said, okay. He said he would be back. He said, stay here. So I had said to him, well, there's another small stairway right next to us here. We could just go there and we could still be inside. And I could see cars. There were cars in the area parked. And he said, no, no. He goes, this building is on fire also. He said, I have to come back for you. He said, stay here. So he left, went back up the stairs. I was laying, kind of as far away from the end of the stairs as I could. And as he left, he promised, he said to me, give me a little bit, I'll be back. And within, I would say 20 minutes to 30 minutes, he came back. And he came back with Port Authority police officer, Captain Cathy Mazza, who I think was the only female Port Authority officer that was killed that day. But I remember, and they had one other fireman with them. But I remember them coming back, and I knew it somehow they were going to have to pick me up to get me back up the stairs. And my initial comment was, listen, how are you guys going to get me back up those stairs? Because I can't walk. And I joked with Captain Mazza. I said, are you sure you're going to be able to do this? So she goes, watch this. And they had formed like an arm bar, some kind of an arm bar, and they made a seat out of their arms. And in one motion, they scooped me up and carried me back up the stairs and back out onto Fulton Street, which was still pretty dense with regard to dust and pretty much everything else, the chaos of going on. They continued to carry me to a Chase bank, a bank branch, which was across the street, but up a little further on Fulton Street. And they pushed the door open and laid me down. Someone had a brace. They have a brace that they had put on my ankle and part of my leg, and they laid me down. And I remember police officer Captain Mazza yelling at people, because what had happened was people gathered in there when the building started to collapse for protection. So it was pretty crowded in there, in the lobby. And they laid me down and they said, he's hurt, don't step on him. And they were kind of yelling. And so they laid me down and then they left. They didn't stay with me. 2 or 3 minutes later, through the door of the bank came the woman that I had finished my walk with, coming down the 60 some flights of stairs that we left upstairs. And she came in screaming, saying, oh my God, I thought you were killed. And what happened was I went left when the medics had said, you need to get up and run. She went to the right. And she got caught in that stampede, because that's where apparently a lot of the people were coming from. So she had gotten knocked over, but it was pure coincidence again that she had come into that bank lobby on Fulton Street. So she'd come in and I said to her, I know I'm hurt, I can't get up. So she said, okay. She goes, I'll be right back. And she actually went back out to Fulton Street and she hailed an ambulance, almost like you would hail a taxi cab, to please stop and come in and pick me up and get me out of the area. And the ambulance did stop. And the guys came in. They again picked me up and they opened up the back doors of the ambulance. And there were two other girls there that were in the ambulance, burned very, very badly. I don't know if you're familiar. One of the girls was the girl in the red dress, who was burned extremely badly in the explosion. I believe it was the explosion that happened on the 78th floor, which in essence where the plane came in. But anyway, they were in the closer to the front seat part of the ambulance. I was just in the back by the back doors, and the ambulance made an attempt to finish going up Fulton Street. I guess at that point, I found out that I was going to St. Vincent's Hospital. As all of that was going on, the North Tower collapsed. And I knew that now I had been aware of pretty much what was going on. The medics that were now in the ambulance trying to drive away, I could hear them panicking because it was another dust cloud. It was another incident of not being able to see and people running. But thankfully, at some point in time, we were able to pull away from the scene, and they took me to St. Vincent's Hospital, where we were met with, I would easily say 50 to 100 medics and doctors standing outside St. Vincent's Hospital who were just waiting. And in essence, there was no one coming in. They greeted, they kind of helped get me out of the ambulance. And then that same ambulance, I knew at that point, was leaving to go to the burn unit for those two other patients. I got into St. Vincent's. They had said, what happened. I tried to explain to them that I knew I had heard a snap, or something. I couldn't walk. There was something wrong with my ankle or my foot. They said, okay, we'll get you an ambulance. They gave me some fluids. There was an attempt to reach out to try to get a hold of my wife at some point in time. And I don't know how it kind of tied into getting to my wife. The hospital did eventually do that. And then they triaged me, and they said, we'll get you an x-ray as soon as we can. They did x-ray my leg and my foot, and they had put a brace on it, and they had said that as near as they could tell, I had just sprained my ankle, was the diagnosis that came back. So I was like, okay, if that's what it is, that's what it is. It hadn't actually started to hurt yet. Although I didn't like the idea of what I had heard when I had fallen, to be honest with you. But within a couple of hours, my wife was able to get to the hospital. She had ran from her Midtown office all the way back down. They were able to get to her, and she had ran being dehydrated. By the time she got to the hospital, she actually had fainted and became a kind of a patient next to me. But we certainly had being reunited and all that. I had rested a little bit, and then I kind of woken back up probably around noontime to a couple FBI agents that were standing right near me, and they had said, the towers aren't there anymore. Do you know what happened? They started asking me a series of questions about some explosions potentially inside the building, and I had said no. So that all kind of happened quickly, and then once my wife was better and hydrated, and we both were a little more alert, there were some federal authorities had said, okay, we'll get you home. We'll take you home back to Brooklyn. And that's pretty much what had happened that night. We got back. Thankfully, we had our babysitter who was usually kept an eye on our daughter. She picked her up at school early that day back in Brooklyn, and my wife, I guess, was able to get in touch with her and let her know that I got hurt, but I was home, and our babysitter said, "Don't worry, I'm going to keep your daughter overnight, so you guys do what you need to do," and that was pretty much that. I recall that night, not getting any sleep, not being able to relax. And then around dinner time, maybe a little later, I started to get some severe pain in my leg and in my ankle. Um, so St. Vincent's had said, listen, if you're having any problems, just come back tomorrow, which we knew really wasn't feasible because everything had been closed up going into New York. Um, so with the pain setting in and, having issues, my wife right away in the morning called our general practitioner, who said, he should be seen by an orthopedic. He recommended an orthopedic, and I was rushed into seeing a local orthopedic surgeon here in Brooklyn. And when he x-rayed it, he had said to me, you have compound fractures, as well as a complete dislocation of the major joint in my foot. If we don't operate right away, you're going to lose your foot. So on the 12th, that morning, I was rushed into surgery locally here, with the attempt of trying to at least fix or stabilize some of the damage that I had had. What ended up happening at St. Vincent's initially was that I think things were so chaotic, and they were so certainly anxious to try to help people. They had cut my x-ray short. They had sent my x-ray over to my orthopedic, and they didn't x-ray far enough down to see all these fractures. So in essence, what my orthopedic said was, he said, you had a complete crush. He said, by the time we got there, there was granulated cartilage and bone, but there really wasn't much we could do with. We just stabilized it initially, and kind of just tried to get the bones to start healing for as long as they could. I mean, I tore nerves, I tore all the ligaments. So it's a full, it was pretty much a full mess. And I would say I was in the hospital overnight, released the next day, and then I was home. And I was basically, thankfully, home. Just going back for a second, my best friend Jack, he did get out of the room that we were both in when the South Tower was hit. What happened was, what we believe happened was, he may have gone back up. Appears as if he made an attempt to go back up, to try to help people who I guess we both knew were still there when the South Tower was hit. And even that he was able to do, but unfortunately, because of the speed in which the South Tower collapsed, he was not able to get back down again, and he was killed in the collapse of the South Tower. He didn't make it out, but that was just, my bank lost, I think, between 25 and 30 people that day. Our human resource department, come to find out, when the North Tower was attacked, our whole human resource department, which was on the 82nd floor of the South Tower, they had gotten up and they went in an elevator all the way down to the street and looked to see what they could see from the North Tower situation. And once it was established that, well, unfortunately, there was something going on, there was a fire in the North Tower, they all had gotten back on an elevator and went back up to the 82nd floor. So once they got themselves resettled on the 82nd floor, in essence, from engineering reports that I had seen, that is where one of the wings had come through from the South Tower. So that whole area was completely cut off, and our whole human resource department was immediately wiped out by the South Tower attack. Which, I mean, I had some friends there too, but Jack was a very close. He was a mentor to me, and kind of like the dad I never really had. So I am friends. I'm very good friends to this day with his stepson. We enjoy a great relationship, and that's a benefit, a positive to all of this. But in essence, that was pretty much my day.
Did you ever find out who the firefighter was and what became of him?
Yes, that's something that we're actually working on at the moment. I know I know that the firefighter who rescued me was definitely from Engine 10 Ladder 10, which was right across Liberty Street there. And the way I know that is he had had a shirt on. Now, it didn't appear to me as if they were on duty, because when people started to run, I had noticed that there were firefighters who were dressed in shorts and t-shirts from Engine 10 Ladder 10 that were also started to run. They had white tube socks and boots on, so I'm assuming that they were off duty. So when I got to the hospital, one of the first persons that I came across that came over to me to try to help calm me down and get me situated was Reverend Chris Keenan, and we had a brief conversation, said a couple of prayers, and he was with me and really my wife for the better part of the day as we tried to recoup a little bit. And he had, I'm very, very close with him now, and he's working on that with me to try to find that firefighter. There appears to be someone. I actually just recently, about a week or so ago, had a conversation with him about someone, and it's looking like we may have found him. So
Is he alive?
I believe he is. I believe he
Wow.
is. Yes. Yes.
And were you able to speak to Detective Mazza's family and let them know what a hero she was? And
no. The interesting thing with that is I haven't. I did find a blog for her. She's on an Officer Down page, um, and it took me a while to find her. And the interesting way that I found her was that I knew she was Port Authority because I remember her white shirt. She was on duty, and the thing that stood out to me was her ponytail. And when I started to look for law enforcement and firefighter deaths as a result of 9/11, I was able to narrow the search down to female Port Authority. I didn't know she was really that high of a ranking officer, and it stunned me one day because her picture had come up, and I almost dropped my phone. I knew instantly that that was her, and in her blog, it was noted, because other people had written things in dedication to her. It was noted that people knew her by her ponytail, and that's one of the features that had stood out to me that day. That this small police officer and hero was going to come down to some garage and pick myself up. I was 6 feet, well over 200 pounds, and she was going to help pick me up. And I was just astonished that she was going to be able to do it. And she was very comforting. I mean, she said to me, "Don't worry, you're going home tonight. Um, we're gonna get you to a safe area." When we got in the bank, she started to yell at people, "Do not step on the gentleman. He's hurt." People were, of course, were panicked and were coming in. But I know some family members of hers through an activist group that we're involved with regarding who was behind 9/11. I met that group in Washington, D.C. Probably 6 or 7 years ago now. And I was astonished when I had told my story to this group of people, and they had said, "Oh, we're related to the Mazza family." And I showed them the piece that I had done and the piece that I had written, and it was quite a reunion. It really was. It was an amazing reunion.
how is your health now?
Um, it's interesting, Michelle. I had uh, been rehabbing, my foot and ankle, and I got to a point, I ended up with some serious nerve injury, which I still have. But in 2004, at a barbecue, I had started to break out in my lower legs. I broke out in some welts um, that were actually very painful just one day. And I had thought that it was a reaction to some food I'd eaten, maybe at the barbecue. And my wife said, no, she goes, that doesn't look like a food allergy. She goes, you should go get that looked at. So I went to my doctor, and my doctor said, yeah, he said, I want you to go get those biopsied, like right tonight. And I think it was, maybe the next day, whatever. I went, I got a punch biopsy done, and those welts were broken blood vessels bleeding beneath the skin. And the way it was explained to me was that that was an autoimmune response to something. Something was wrong. And they were very, very painful. It actually hurt to walk. And they sent me around to a couple of doctors, and they said, listen, we're going to give you some medicine. We're going to give you some oral chemotherapy to make this go away right now, but it's probably going to be chronic, and it's clearly an autoimmune response to something. Now, I had never had, I mean, when I was working, I saved my sick days because I just never really, thankfully, I'd been healthy and never got sick. So I have some serious, this turned out to be a blood infection that I monitor constantly. Um, I did have some breathing issues initially. I was on an inhaler for a while. Um, you know, Overall, I mean, I need a fusion operation um, due to the injury that I have. One of the surgeons that I talked to said, um, just don't do it too soon because the surgery itself constantly keeps changing, that they can make things easier or better, but the recovery on it is quite extensive, and the rehab on it apparently is quite extensive. I mean, I've had a number of, I have some neurological things that are going on right now, actually. Um, so I've been, it's been basically, I mean, one of the doctors said to me, you're going to be at least a 10 or a 15-year science experiment because of your exposure to being stuck in that dust cloud. Even though I certainly didn't work down there, I certainly didn't, I certainly wasn't anywhere near working on a pile, whatever, but just initially being caught in that whole thing has definitely opened me up, and I've had issues. I've had health issues.
Well, definitely anyone caught up in that cloud, anyone who was there should be signed up with the World Trade Center Health Program. Are you
I am.
signed up?
Yeah, I
Good.
am.
That's
Yeah,
good.
I am.
I was also wondering about your emotional state of mind. I mean, my God, you are so lucky to be alive
Yes.
there, but
Um,
for the grace of God, and you lost your dear friend. How are you
um,
doing emotionally and mentally?
you know, I am on medication, which helps me a great deal. It took a while to find the right medication, to be honest with you. Um, so I do have anxiety and at times some depression. Um, uh, I can, and I told a number of people this. Unfortunately, this is something that is burned into, I think, I know in my memory, that I can put myself back into different situations of that morning and really of that day very easily. I mean, your mind wanders, and I can. So I mean, I do have quite a bit of flashback at times. Um, One of the things that really upsets me, even to this day, that I continue to struggle with, um, is if I see a plane um, flying relatively low as it prepares. And we live in Brooklyn, and I think we're right in a flight path of Kennedy. Um, so if I see or hear a plane, um, and I know they're getting set to land, it still creates a sweat, fear, and a whole response for me, um, to that. Um, but I do struggle with emotion, and I do struggle with some depression, um, as a result of it.
How do you view life now?
Um, you know, for me, every day's a gift. Um, I I really uh, take every day when I get out of bed of like, thank you. And um, there's a lot of what I believe now is small stuff that I just I just don't bother with anymore. The the little stuff in life that upsets people, and I'm certainly not making fun of in any way another person's situation regarding their own stress or their own situations, but I don't really get caught up in um, the the issues of life. I'm just happy to be walking around, giving hugs to my family, uh, uh, seeing friends, trying to make new friends. I'll be honest with you. That's something that I struggled with for a long time, because one morning, I mean, the friendships that I developed at work with colleagues, and certainly my best friend there, that was my circle. Not that I didn't have a couple of friends outside of work, but so with all of that changing, and with the amount of people that were killed from Fuji, um, for a period of time I was a little lost, to be honest with you, because all my friends died. A lot of my friends died. So it's taken me some time to format new friends and new relationships, and I've done it over a period of time. And even that, I think, going through that, process, I knew it was happening, and that made me sad, because I was always afraid of, I didn't want to upset anyone talking about my experience, and you don't just say to anyone, hey, do you want to be my friend, because all my other friends died, in a matter of minutes. Um, so that's the emotional side of it that I think I've struggled with. I've gotten better with it, um, but still, I'm honestly, there's a lot of apprehension. I mean, I meet people, I'll talk to anybody. That's just kind of like how I am. I love kids. I mean, I'll talk to, um, but I just, there's some apprehension there, regarding whether or not anyone would want to be my friend, or whether or not, I'm going to get a label like, oh, you're one of those people who survived. So it's been a little tough that way.
Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think that, um, I pray every day that, um, for the heroes and the people that really stepped forward and rescued me, and gave me the opportunity to come home. Uh, I know that I very easily, on several accounts that day, I had said to myself, you're probably going to be killed. Um, I was really, really scared of that. Um, and I wasn't, but that happened also because of these great people who stepped forward and did their, not only did their job, but just ran in the opposite directions of so many of us. And I'm grateful. And every day I say a prayer for those great people, and um, knowing that they stepped forward, and then they saved my life. And that's something that I'll never, ever, ever forget. And I see firemen today, and I see policemen today in the neighborhood, and I know I can't go up to them right now with the pandemic and shake their hand, or maybe even give them the hug I want to give them, but I always give them a thumbs up, and very respectful of these heroes and these people who do this for a living.
Thank you so much, Tim.